Google scraps the DI program, Meta lays off 5% of their entire workforce, and does Elon Musk have your data? Welcome to Ask About Tech. Let's dive in. Google just announced that they've ended their diversity aspirations due to their status as a federal contractor. In their annual report that they published on Wednesday, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, excluded language from prior years that stated that we're committed to making diversity, equity, and inclusion part of everything we do, and to growing a workforce that is representative of the users we serve. And here was the justification that they provided. Because we're a federal contractor, our teams are also evaluating changes to our programs required to comply with recent court decisions and U.S. executive orders on this topic. Ciccone, their chief people officer, wrote in the memo, which was viewed by CNBC. We'll continue to invest in states across the U.S. and in many countries globally, but in the future, we would no longer have aspirational goals. Ever since last year, I believe, or even the year before that, you saw all of the DI momentum that kind of like picked up steam in 2020 start to roll back, right? You've been seeing a lot of backlash, a lot of pushback. And I think Alphabet is just the latest company in those series of companies to make this type of changes. Now, I'm not saying that the DI programs are being 100% perfect, but I think that they've moved the needle generally in the right direction. See, Black people only make up 4% of the tech workforce while making up 13% of the entire US population. Now, I'm not saying it has to be a match for match, but I think that just shows a picture of what is possible or what the potential can be if we put in the right effort to attract, train, develop, and hire people into this position. I think that there are enough talented people within the community, and that with investment and support, we could actually unlock this potential. And I think companies recognize that, which is why this picked up a lot of steam and helped a lot of people make that transition. People who were teachers, police officers, firefighters, making the change and making that leap in their career to start new things. And my fear is like this undoes a lot of that progress. This undoes a lot of that work. And that's the sad part for me. But I hope that this is a moment to reflect and regroup and find new solutions, find new ways to empower, train, develop talented people who can succeed in these roles, right? And for companies to also look for ways to remove some of this impediments and hindrances that inadvertently ensure that people don't get into these roles. You have things, for example, in universities like legacy admissions that meant that the best schools only hire people who had already had opportunities, which meant that people who are first generation don't get those same opportunities, right? You have things like referrals or like warm intros and things like that that would help people get jobs naturally. But if you're first generation college educated, if you don't have those kind of opportunities, you're not going to get access to those kind of things. So while I do hear some of the arguments on the other side of why, maybe DI isn't always the best approach, and maybe that some people might feel or are even being discriminated against, I think that there are a lot of positives there. And I would hope that, a lot of people are doing work to ensure that we're taking a lot of the good out of this, but taking a lot of that progress forward. And if there's any positive or any good thing that I could take out of this entire report, it's that commitment that I think Google is making. So two things they say here, right? They say that they're going to keep employee resource groups, and that will be something like a Google, right? Those kind of opportunities where employees, Black employees or Hispanic employees or employees from even other underrepresented groups can get together and, figure out plans and programs that they want to do to reach out and support people within their communities. So I think that's a great thing that they keep in that. Also, they say they're going to continue to work with colleges and universities. And I imagine that that's to source, diverse talent from those pipelines. That can be things like HBCUs and can even extend to things like tech conferences like Afrotech, Shilpi, and all these other conferences where, you typically have diverse candidates. The spokesperson also says that they're committed to creating a workplace where all our employees can succeed and have equal outcome. And over the last year, we've been reviewing our programs designed to help us get there. My hope is that all of this is not just lip service, that they're actually going to action this, because even though this is a downer, if they commit to all of these things and follow through, there's still a lot of positives for underrepresented and diverse talent looking to pivot into tech to still be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And if you're one of those people, definitely keep an eye on some of these programs. I know Google has some amazing programs. There's a Tech Equity Collective, for example, looking to support candidates who are underrepresented. There's also like a GERD certified program where Google is offering like free certifications in like Google Cloud, Digital Leader, Professional Architect, Cloud Engineer, and things like that. So watch out for those. Those opportunities will still exist. And if you're trying to break into tech, try and take advantage of that as much as possible. Elon Musk is in the news again, and this time it's about data. Reports from the Washington Post claim that Elon Musk Doge is feeding sensitive federal data into AI to target cuts. At the Department of Education, the tech billionaire and his team have turned to artificial intelligence to hunt for potential spending cuts. The story goes further to read the AI probe includes data with personally identifiable information for people who manage grants as well as sensitive internal financial data, the two people said. They described Doge activities at the education department on the condition of anonymity due to fear of retaliation. Now, this is something that's pretty significant because if you work in sectors like insurance or financial sector or the health sector, you have many regulations in place specifically designed to protect people's privacy, like HIPAA, and even many across the financial industry. You have things that mean that you can't even make decisions about certain things using like people's personal information to avoid things like discrimination. Everybody knows about the history of redlining and things like that, and those are what policies like that are designed to stop. Also, with HIPAA, for example, like people's health information is very private to them, right? So you also want to protect that. I think this may not necessarily be on the same level of gradation, but I still think that it's a very interesting move for them to be leveraging AI to be accessing, things around sensitive financial data, contracts, trips, expenses, and things like that. Unless maybe it's an AI that exists within a sandbox or that's something that's controlled. But and of course, I doubt that they're going to be using ChatGPT, or a similar model to run that. But I still think that there's a risk there, and it's a little concerning that they've chosen that approach. But if there's anything, I'll probably say that given that Elon himself is also like somebody who's very tech savvy, is somebody who has built many tech companies, many of them successful. I would imagine that they're putting safeguards in place to ensure that none of that data is compromised, leaked, or being trained on and made accessible to a larger model and things like that, because that's where I feel like the biggest challenge exists. So, in your opinion, what do you think about them giving this kind of access? Do you think that Elon and his team should have this much access and be able to run things on like people's personal data, or do you think that that's a no-no? Let me know in the comments. Meta recently announced that they'll be laying off 3,500 of their employees. Well, this was not even a recent announcement. I think on the top of the year, Mark Zuckerberg had made some reference to laying off underperformers, and we're finally seeing it come to fruition. Last month, Meta, which owns the popular social media platforms Facebook and Instagram, sent a stern warning to employees that it was planning to cut roughly 3,600 jobs. The number amounts to about 5% of the workforce. In an internal memo sent to employees, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said that the job cuts will be based on performance, and the company will be hiring new employees this year to replace those who are laid off. Uh, I've decided to raise the bar on performance management and move out low performers faster, said Zuckerberg in the memo. We typically manage out people who are meeting expectation over the course of a year, but now we're going to do more extensive performance-based cuts during this cycle. Zuckerberg said the layoffs come during a time when Meta is heavily focusing on artificial intelligence, its smart glasses, and the future of social media. This is going to be an intense year, and I want to make sure that we have the best people on our teams, said Zuckerberg. But here's the issue. They're not only getting under so-called, they're not only getting underperformers in this round of layoffs, if you like, because this first round of meta job cuts kicked in on February 10th, and some employees who were let go are claiming that they were blindsided by being laid off since they had recently received positive performance reviews, according to a new report from Business Insider. The fired Meta employees who spoke to Insider said that they received at or above expectations ratings in their 2024 media reviews. These ratings are allegedly the mid-tier in Meta's three-level performance system. The former employees claimed that when they received the notification that their jobs were being cut, they were shocked to find out that their ratings are falling to meets most, which is a lower tier in Meta's performance rating system. That means an employee met most, but not all of the expectations. And this post on an anonymous job platform corroborates that story. The title says, "High performing engineer was laid off from my org at Meta." It reads, "I was working on a project with a very strong mid-level engineer. He had taken full ownership of the product area and was churning out devs at a rapid rate. It was also complaining that no one on his team was helping him with reviews, which meant he had a pretty long queue of emerged changes. Today, I wake up to find that he's no longer in the system, and two of his teammates have separately copied all of his pending changes and submitted them as their own. Stay safe out there, folks. I realize now that this isn't the company anyone should be at if they want a sane, fulfilling career and want to stay out of politics." And this is my challenge generally with this kind of like so-called performance-based courts that are kind of like sweeping in their nature, because it sets this expectation amongst employees that somebody has to go. I think they already set that target, and everybody now is trying to look for who to throw under the bus to make sure that it's not them. Everybody has a sense of self-preservation. There are other tech companies that have done this before, but this hasn't been widespread in an industry. But ever since we started to see the trends with layoffs, especially after COVID and companies complaining about them trying to balance the books, but now that we're seeing record profits, we're still seeing layoffs and like hiring freezes all over the industry, which is very concerning. But this is another trend that's coming into play, right? Where companies are now saying we're trying to, get rid of the low performers of the team. But this is an unintended consequence, right? Where you might have people who are performing well who may just get caught up in this storm because the company is not doing the due diligence, or they've decided to just pursue a blanket strategy that will get a lot of good people caught in the crosshairs. I don't like it, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comment. Do you think that this is the right way for companies to be managing employee performances? Or do you think that there's a better way that they could go about it that's not large scale and not putting a target on the backs of their employees? Because most of those employees are not going to go out, and if it shows that they were fired during this period or laid off during this period, it also puts a negative connotation on them and makes it even more challenging for them to find their next opportunity. But I'm curious to hear what you think in the comments below. And speaking of layoffs, this past couple of years, including 2024, have been very brutal when it comes to tech employment. You're seeing a lot of talent in the market, a lot of layoffs, hiring freezes, which means that it's just a lot more challenging for people to find those opportunities. And TechCrunch actually put together an entire list of all those layoffs just to kind of like put everything in perspective. So here it is. It says that the tech layoff wave continued through 2024. Following significant workforce reductions in 2022 and 2023, 2024 saw more than 150,000 job cuts across 542 companies, according to independent layoffs tracker layoffs.fyi. Large companies like Tesla, Amazon, Google, TikTok, Snap, and Microsoft conducted sizable layoffs in 2024, while smaller startups also experienced cuts and in some cases shut down their operations altogether. So we'll continue to, and they say that they continue to track the layoffs into 2025 so they can see the trajectory of these cutbacks. And you can see the list here, right? 6,003 laid off in January, 2,268 in December, 5,925 in November, and the list goes on and on and on. So if you're interested in seeing this list, I'm going to put the link in the description below. Yeah, it's really scary out there. So if you have a job, stick to it. Make sure you're delivering on your goals. This is not the time to be effing around in tech because we don't want to be finding out. So put in those performances, checking with your leader, make sure you're doing all the right thing. And if you're on the outside looking in, put in those applications. It might take a couple hundred before now it's taking over 1,000 applications. But if you're really determined to make it in tech, I think even in the midst of all this craziness, you can still make it happen. And I'm rooting for you. And this week's episode is not going to be all doom and gloom because to end today's show, I'm spotlighting an amazing woman who has just been hired at Salesforce to lead their finance operations. Robin Washington has just been appointed by Salesforce as CFO and president to lead their finance and operations. She brings an extensive experience in finance and leadership roles. According to this news article from CNBC, Washington 62 has been Salesforce lead independent director since 2022 after taking a seat on its board in 2013. In 2019, she retired from Gilead and became a director at Alphabet. Washington will remain on Salesforce board, and Arnold Donald, the former Carnival CEO who's been on Salesforce board since 2023, will become the lead independent director, according to a statement. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff praised Washington's abilities in a post on social media site X. A visionary leader, former CFO of Gilead, and longtime Salesforce board member, Robin's expertise will guide us into Agentforce era, Benioff wrote. Salesforce has been busy promoting Agentforce add-on software that can automate sales and customer service processes inside of companies. Earlier in her career, Washington ran finance and enterprise software provider Hyperion and was vice president at a software seller, PeopleSoft. She has also been an auditor at Deloitte. Hyperion and PeopleSoft were both acquired by Oracle, where Benioff worked before he co-founded Salesforce in 1999. This story gets me really excited, and I definitely want to see more underrepresented folk get into these roles, and seeing a highly talented, experienced, and qualified leader like Robin Washington take such a position at a big company is a big nod, to giving diverse talent a chance, to looking for diverse talent, finding them in the places, taking opportunities to them in the places where they may not naturally be looking or where they might be overlooked in the first place, and making this process be easier, right? A lot of things about hiring is not fair. A lot of things about hiring is not always straight cut, which is why it's shout out to companies who recognize that and look to kind of like balance those scale by taking opportunities again to those spaces where they may not necessarily exist and looking outside the same candidates that they may have overlooked in the past. I think that's how to do it. Solutions like that are what will help build a more sustainable future where Black voices feel like they're represented and they can find opportunities that help them rise and succeed in the tech industry. That has been the show for today. Thank you for rocking with me. Is there something that's exciting or that's been in the news that I didn't cover on today's episode? Feel free to chime in the comments and I'll be sure to look out for it in next week's episode. If you're looking to break into tech, I host a weekly podcast called Working in Tech, and I've had amazing guests from different roles: cybersecurity, product management, software engineering. So if that's something that you're really interested in, check out my podcast. I'm going to link it here and in the description below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ask About Tech, where we break down all the tech stories, news, and how it affects you to help you prepare and be ready to take opportunities in tech as they show up. See you on the next episode. Peace.